This is the Dr. Paul Show, a woman's personal guide to understanding men. And now, here's Dr. Paul.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul, the Dr. Paul Show. Welcome aboard. Flirting! Have you been flirting? We all flirt. Are you sure? Are you really sure that you have been flirting? Or have you just kind of been playing around with it? Well, all animal species flirt. And I'm talking about not just those that are mammals, but even fish, even lizards in their own way. But the reason I'm mentioning that is because everybody flirts at a different level. Let's say, for example, that you happen to be in a particular part of the country where, well, maybe things are a little more regular, not so rushed. We're not talking about New York City now or Chicago or, L.A. We're talking about maybe an area that's a little more settled. All right? Now, your type of flirting might be a little bit different from the way people flirt in New York. And by the way, in New York, they might even flirt differently at levels there, and they do. I went through a number of researches this week after having received emails regarding flirting. Oddly enough, these emails come in bunches. I don't know why that is, but they do. Now, when you flirt with someone, you have to ask yourself, do I do it consciously or do I do it subconsciously? What level am I on? Am I doing something that's being offensive to that person? You may be doing something that would be just perfect with a person you meet in a bar, men and or women. Maybe you meet somebody in a quote-unquote cocktail lounge that may be, well, let's not use the word sleazy, but you shouldn't be there anyway. But let's say that you're in a cocktail lounge that may not be at the level that maybe a lot of people would go to and maybe some wouldn't, okay? What happens? You start flirting. And the person there that you're flirting with may be in that situation all the time. How is that going to come off? Is it going to work? No. People perceive flirting in different ways. What might seem like flirting to one person may really turn somebody off at a different level. For example, you go to a very classy bar, maybe this jazz bar, something like that, and you walk up to a woman and you say, "Wow, you're beautiful. Wow, you're hot." That's going to impress her, isn't it? Don't you believe, guys, that they have heard that before? They'll probably sit there and go, it happens all the time. I have had more women email to me and say, please tell guys to stop it. And the reason I'm saying that is because they've heard it once too often. They don't need it, and they've heard it once too often. Women, when you go to a bar, you go to a club, you go to an organization, and you want to flirt with a guy, what happens? You sit down with maybe a couple of your girlfriends, you look around, right? And you start talking. Now, that man knows you're talking about him, and what happens? He becomes intimidated. I don't know if I'm going to go over there and talk to them or not. Well, he may or may not come over, but he knows you're talking about him. And then if you start laughing among yourselves, then he'll feel he's laughing at me. Take the girls out of the picture. It's just you, all right? Here's a lady every day, maybe she gets on the elevator, looks at a man, and kind of glances away. That, in effect, is flirting. Okay, now if you don't want that to happen, wear dark glasses. And a lot of people do. All right, maybe she's not interested at all, but the man picks up on the signal and says, she's interested in me. Maybe not. Be sure. You don't know. And if you don't know, you're going to make a fool of yourself. Women, when you flirt with somebody, don't act, okay? React. Don't act, react. What do I mean by that? Someone gives you the impression that they may be flirting with you. Just react in a coy fashion, as if you have some class. I mean, you don't walk, and you can be aggressive, you can be assertive. You can be like, I got to read something to you. When Hillary met Bill Clinton, they met in the library at Yale. And I'm not certain I have this down exactly right, but here's how it worked. They were looking at each other across the library. And finally, and this is a very assertive lady, Hillary Clinton, as you well know, got up, walked across, and she said to him, look, as long as we're both looking at each other, why don't we finally meet each other? Perfect. Perfect. That's what you do. And I think that's the best information that I can give to a woman about flirting. Don't let a man get away with it. Nail him. Walk up and say, I've noticed that you're, and I'm not interested, or I am interested. Let him know. Don't respond because you think you have to. You do not have to. If someone's flirting on a level that you don't like, ignore him. But if it gets too obnoxious, tell him about it. Go right to the source. If you like it, fine. Then tell him that. If you don't like it, that's fine too. The point is, there's no problem. You've got to do it on your own. And I think it's important for you to do one thing. Make it on your terms. Look, my book, Boomer Girls, a dating guide for women. This is important. And flirting is critically important because oftentimes that's how we meet people. We may meet them at a business luncheon, at a business gathering, at a charitable gathering, whatever it may be. Maybe at a party. And there may be different levels of flirting at those various places. And there may be things that you might do in a club that would be strictly and totally inappropriate at a gathering of other people. You can be subtle. And ladies, you can be subtle too. If you really want to meet this guy, then be subtle in the following way. European women do this very well. And I know I've been there. They will walk up to the person and in a very classy way say, I'd like to get to meet you. I have noticed that you've been looking my direction, and I'd like to introduce myself. Done. If the man has this attitude down here as opposed to up there, he's going to say, wow, she's hot for me. No, she isn't. Wrong. Not. Forget it. Finet. Over. If he says, well, thank you. I'm very flattered to hear about your interest, and I'd like to have coffee with you. Go for the coffee. Go for the coffee. Don't go for a drink. And I've said this before, too. I've said that in my book. Why do I say that? Because it doesn't set up defense systems. If someone's thinking, oh, I'll get her a couple of drinks, she'll be cool. Well, I'm there. Wrong. Bad idea. If you allow that to happen to you, ladies, then you're flirting on that lower level, that lower rung. It's probably about 5 different levels of flirting. Where do you want to be and who do you want to find? Okay? Not to diminish anybody who's on the bottom rung, but if that's what you want, then go for it. That's where you are. If you're on the top rung, if you're someplace in between, fine. But you know what I'm talking about. You can feel it. And for heaven's sakes, whatever you do, when you get into a situation where you happen to be with your girlfriends and I don't care if you're in a club, at a charitable organization, whatever it may be, a dinner, a luncheon, whatever it is, do yourself a favor. Don't make that person you may be interested in feel uneasy because you're looking at him, talking to your girlfriends, and you're all laughing because he's going to think they're laughing at me. Went to a jazz gathering with my significant other. And I was watching the dynamics, as I always do. And I said to her, look at this over here. This woman is with 2 other women, and this man is kind of looking at the one and then looking away, which means this is kind of his way of flirting. And she's looking over, and then she talks to her girlfriends, and they giggle. Where do you think that went? It didn't go anywhere. Dropped right there. Why? Because he didn't feel confident enough to say, oh, well, I'm looking at her and they're probably laughing about it, and I'm not going to look at him anymore. That very frail male ego has just absolutely gone away. It's like, oops, I'm going to go home, suck my thumb, sit in the closet. It works. I had a call on one of the shows, and it was really amazing. This pretty much happened to a woman, and she decided that the next time she was going out, she was going to go out with only one other woman, not two or three, which worked out rather well for her, as it turned out. And she said she learned. I've always said win or learn, but don't win or lose. It always pays off to win. If you're going to flirt, have a plan. Okay? Plan your work and work your plan. Plan your flirt and work your flirt. Figure out what level you want to be on. Who do you want to meet and why? I had an email about a month ago, and I think Mike might remind me, wasn't that about a month ago the woman wrote in and said, how can I meet someone on a higher level? Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we said a charity. We said go to a charitable function, maybe a...
Right, there's a lot of single people there. So
right, and people that may be at the level that she wants to meet.
Of good character.
Hopefully,
yeah.
Right. At least they're great actors, right? So anyway, we heard, and it may not be from her, but another person who apparently saw that show and said, I'm glad you said that, because I did exactly what you said. Had broken up with someone and then went to a charity. I don't know, it's a charity ball. She said a charity function. Okay. And as a result of going there, she met some people who were interesting. She changed her mode. She changed her thinking. She stopped going to ye old club where the guy that was there 3 years ago is definitely going to be there today. They don't change. They go over and over and over and over. I can tell places in the Tampa Bay area, and if you go there and you were there 3 years ago, you'll see the same people today that you saw there 3 years ago. That's a dead end. So if you're going back to flirting, you're going to flirt, learn how to do it. Do it within the framework and target that you want to find yourself in. You want to be in that particular level that you feel comfortable with. Have your comfort zone and see how to do it. If you're going, and there's nothing wrong, you go to a country western bar and you're a great dancer and that's cool, and somebody comes up and says to you, may I buy you a drink? That's up to you. You can turn around and say, no, but I'll share a drink with you. I'll have one and you can have one. Now, what does that do? It gives you stature. All of a sudden, guess what happens? You have respect. That's a form of flirting. When you establish your ground, when you establish your territory, then you have made somebody respect you. That itself is a form of flirting. All right? The guy says, oh, this is not going to be like I thought it was going to be. This one has a spine. She has an ability to make me respect that. All right, we went through flirting. Any questions on that, email me, call me on the show, whatever. I think our producer will give you the numbers right now. This is Dr. Paul. We'll be back after these messages.
Have a question for Dr. Tough Love? Call him live in the Tampa Bay area, 727-441-3000. Or you can call him toll-free at 886-826-1340. You can also send him an email at doc@askdrpaul.com. The Dr. Paul Show will be right back after these messages.